The woman on the morning show dabbed her eye with one knuckle and called me a deserter mom, and she said it so gently it sounded like a prayer. I was sitting in a parking lot when I heard it. Engine off. Both hands flat on the wheel the way you hold still when a thing is loud and you are not allowed to flinch. On the little screen in my palm, my ex-husband nodded along beside her, sad and patient, a man being brave for a child. The host tilted her head. The caption under them read, "A mother who chose the army over her own son." I train soldiers for a living. My whole job is teaching young people not to come apart when everything inside them wants to. So I did the thing I teach. I breathed out slow. I set the phone face down on the seat. And I drove to work, because it was a Tuesday and I had 90 recruits who did not care what a television said about me. But my son was 8 years old, and he was going to see it before I could get to him. To tell it right, I have to go back to the spring before any camera was ever pointed at my family. My name is Shay Kendrick. That summer I was 41, a drill sergeant at Fort Jackson just outside Columbia, South Carolina, where the July heat comes down like a hand on the back of your neck. I had worn the uniform for going on 19 years. I say that plainly because plain is the only way I trust myself to say it. Rank and years look like small print on a page until somebody who understands what they cost says them out loud. Keep that in your mind. It comes back around. I had a son named Cole. He was 8. He had his father's ears and my flat, careful way of watching a room before he walked into it. Monday through Friday, I taught teenagers how to carry 100 pounds of gear and their own fear at the same time. And then I drove home and taught my own boy how to knot a tie for the school concert, and which fork was for the salad, because somebody at recess had told him we did not have manners. We had manners. We just also had a duffel bag by the door, always packed the way a soldier's house always has one. Cole's father was named Garrett. We had been married for 6 years and divorced for 3. I will not pretend I was easy to be married to. I kept odd hours. I came home tired and quiet. I answered a phone at 2 in the morning and left for a field problem before the coffee finished. But I never once left my son. Not the way they would say I did. Every deployment, every training rotation, every week I spent in the field, there was a plan on file with my unit and signed in front of a notary, a document the Army requires of every single parent who wears the uniform. It says in careful language exactly who has the child, and exactly when, and exactly how. It is called a family care plan. Remember that name, too. Garrett had gotten engaged that spring to a woman named Danielle. She was 29, she sold luxury cars, and she smiled at me in the school pickup line the way you smile at a coat you were about to give away. I did not dislike her, I want to be honest about that. I felt almost nothing about her at all, which I think bothered her more than hatred would have. Here is the thing they decided about me, the story they told themselves until they believed it enough to say it on television. A deserter mom. A woman who chose the army over her own child, who walked out, who put a duffel bag ahead of a boy's birthday. It is a clean, cruel little story, and it has one great advantage. It is easy to tell in 30 seconds to a camera, and the truth takes a stack of certified paper and a person patient enough to read it. They were betting I would never make anyone read it. They did not know who taught my instructors. The segment aired on a Tuesday in July on a local program called Midland's Morning, the kind of show that runs between the weather and a cooking demonstration. 6 soft minutes of a lit couch and a host with a warm voice. Garrett had told me none of it was coming. Cole had a summer cold that week, and the last message I had from him through the parenting app said only, "He is fine, do not overreact." So I did not know it was happening. I found out the way strangers found out. I was in the parking lot outside the commissary when my phone started buzzing, in the way phones do when something has gone wrong. A cousin, a woman from Cole's school, then Priya, my closest friend. 3 words only. "Are you okay?" I opened the link. There was Danielle on the couch, in a soft yellow dress, a tissue folded in her hand like a prop she had rehearsed with. There was Garrett beside her, in a collared shirt I had bought him, his hand on her knee, his face arranged into something patient and wounded. And there was the host, leaning in, her voice gentle as warm milk. Danielle did most of the talking. She talked about a little boy who asks where his mommy went. She talked about tucking him in on the nights he cries. She said she never expected to become a mother this way, but somebody had to stay. Then she pressed one knuckle under her eye, and she said the words that would be shared 90,000 times before the week was out. Some moms choose their child, and some choose the army. He calls her a deserter mom now. We just tell him his mother is very busy. The host made a small, sad sound. The camera held on Danielle's face, and down at the bottom of the screen in white letters the caption read, "When a parent chooses duty over her child." I want to tell you I felt rage. I have gone looking for the rage many times since, and I cannot find it in the memory. What I felt was the specific cold that comes over you on a range when a weapon does something it is not supposed to do, and you have half a second to be exactly right. My hands went flat on the wheel, my breathing dropped into the slow count I teach to 18-year-olds, and one thought stood up in me, clear and level. My son is going to see this. He did. Before lunch. A boy 2 grades ahead of him had it on a phone at the water fountain and played it for him the way children do, not cruel, exactly, just careless with a thing they do not understand. Cole was 8. He heard a room full of grown-ups agree that his mother had left him. Then he had to sit through 4th period reading like it was a normal day. When I picked him up that afternoon, he did not cry. He got in the truck and buckled his belt and looked straight ahead through the windshield and asked me one question in a voice that had gone very small and very old. "Did you leave me for the army?" I have been screamed at by men twice my size. I have stood in a doorway at 3 in the morning and told a 19-year-old that his mother had passed and he needed to come with me. Nothing has ever landed on me the way that one small question did from that one small person in the heat of that truck cab. I did not defend myself. I did not run down his father. I said nobody. I never left you, and I am going to show you, not tell you. Give me a little time. Then I drove us home, and I started to think like a soldier instead of a mother who had just been slapped. By that night, the clip had a life of its own. It jumped from the station's page to the kind of accounts that harvest other people's pain for numbers, and the comments filled up with people who had never met me and knew exactly who I was. They called me things I will not repeat in front of the memory of my son. They found an old photo of me in uniform and wrote captions across it. Somebody tagged my chain of command. Somebody tagged the army itself. And Garrett, who had lit the match, played the man trying to put it out. He posted a careful little note asking everyone to please respect the family's privacy in this difficult time. It was perfect. He got to swing the hammer and hold out the bandage in the same afternoon. I understood the shape of it by then. This was not really about a morning show. In 2 weeks we had a hearing. Garrett had filed to change our custody arrangement to take the ordinary schedule we had followed for 3 years and cut my time down to every other weekend supervised. His argument was going to be that my work made me unstable, unavailable, a risk to my own child. And now he had a television segment and a viral clip and a comment section full of strangers to prove that the whole world already agreed with him. I want you to understand what every other weekend supervised actually meant, because it is easy to hear it as a legal phrase and miss the size of it. It meant Cole would spend most of his childhood in Garrett and Danielle's house, and I would get him 2 Saturdays a month in a county building at a table with a stranger taking notes on how I hugged my own son. It meant no more school concerts on a Tuesday. No more early pickups when he woke up with a fever. No more knotting a tie before a recital or being the uniform in the back row at a class party. It meant that the one true thing I had built my whole complicated life around, being his mother, would be handed to me in supervised pieces an hour at a time while a smiling woman on a morning show got to play the part of the one who stayed. That was the stake. Not my pride. My boy. Losing the ordinary days that make you a parent, the boring ones, the ones nobody puts on television. So no, this was never about a segment. The segment was just the weapon. The target was Cole. He knew me. That was the worst part. He knew I did not make scenes. He knew I would not call the station screaming, would not go on camera on my own phone crying, would not do a single one of the things that would have made me look exactly like the unstable woman they were describing. He had built a trap out of my own discipline. Every calm, quiet, dignified thing I had ever taught myself to be, he was planning to use as the bars. That first night I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand, and I typed a reply to him on the parenting app. It was 3 paragraphs long. It was true, every word of it, and it was furious under the flat surface, and my thumb hovered over the send button for a long time. I did not send it. I have thought a lot about why. Part of it was training. You do not return fire before you know the position. But part of it was smaller and more human than that. I was tired. I was so tired of explaining myself to a man who had decided years ago that the truth about me was an inconvenience. I deleted the message. I set the phone face down, and I did the only thing that has ever actually worked in my life when a thing feels too big to carry. I called a woman who had known me since we were both scared kids in basic training, and I asked her what she saw. Her name was Priya Ramaswamy, and she did not comfort me. She did something better. Priya Ramaswamy was a staff sergeant like me, 40 years old, a fellow drill sergeant 2 companies over. We had come up together, gone gray at the temples together, cried in exactly 1 parking lot together across 20 years, and never spoke of it after. She was the most organized human being I have ever met. She kept receipts the way other people keep grudges. She came over that night and sat at my kitchen table and let me talk for about 10 minutes. Then she held up one hand flat, the way you do to stop a formation. "Stop," she said. "Stop replying to him. Stop reading the comments. Stop explaining yourself. You are doing the one thing he needs you to do, which is react. Right now, you are a feeling. We are going to turn you back into a fact." I asked her what she meant. She said, "You have spent your whole career proving things with paper. You do not win a promotion board with your feelings. You win it with a packet. So build the packet." And then, at my own kitchen table, past midnight, we made a list. Certified copies of my assignment orders going back every year of Cole's life. Not printouts. Certified with the raised seal, the kind a court cannot wave away. Every one of them would show the truth Garrett was counting on nobody ever checking. Every single deployment and every long field rotation lined up against a plan on file, signed, notarized, that said precisely who had our son and exactly when. The family care plan itself, the notarized one, the document the Army makes every single parent in uniform complete, the one that proves I had never once left my child without a named, approved legal guardian, and a schedule laid out, down to the hour, 2 years of the child support ledger, every payment on time in full, printed from the state system, with a date stamp on each line. And the thing that Priya being Priya thought of last and loved the most. The school sign-in sheets. 2 years of them. Every field trip I had chaperoned, every class party I had shown up to, in uniform, straight off a training range, every early pickup, every parent-teacher night, all of it, in my own handwriting, in the school's own logbook, with the date printed beside my name. A deserter does not sign in at a second-grade Thanksgiving party. A deserter is not in the logbook in her own hand, in her own name, 41 times in 2 years. Priya looked at that list, and she said the thing that changed everything. "Do not send this to a lawyer. she said. I told him my lawyer was going to want all of it for the hearing. She said yes, and he should have every page, and the hearing is where you win your son. But the hearing is a closed room. What they did to you, they did in the open to 90,000 strangers. And a thing that gets broken in the open has to be mended in the open, or it never really heals. Send it, she said to the producer. I did not understand yet. I do now. But that night, all I said was, they will never put me back on that show. They already got their story. Priya smiled for the first time all evening. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who has already thought 2 moves ahead. You are not going on that show, she said. Somebody else is. And she would not tell me who. Not yet. I need to tell you about Lavinia Trask, because everything turns on her, and because she would be furious that I am spending so many words on her instead of on the soldiers. Command Sergeant Major Trask retired was a legend at the Drill Sergeant Academy before I ever pinned on my hat. She had run the schoolhouse that trained the people who trained me. 31 years in the Army, most of it spent turning nervous privates into people who could be trusted with other people's lives. There is a certain kind of senior non-commissioned officer who becomes a sort of weather inside the institution, and she was that. Sergeants who never met her quoted her anyway. She had a saying that got passed down like a family recipe. She used to tap a personnel file and say, "This is not paper, this is a person. Somebody's whole life is in these dates, so you get the dates right." She was 73 now. A widow, living in a small brick house on the far side of Columbia, with bad knees and a recliner, and, as it turned out, a television that was tuned to Midland's Morning the day my family went on the air. Here is what I did not know, sitting in that commissary parking lot, with my hands flat on the wheel. 2 miles away, an old woman in a recliner had watched the same segment. She had heard a smiling young woman say, "Deserter, Mom," about a soldier. And she had leaned forward because something snagged. She knew my name. Years before, when I was coming up, my orders had crossed her desk. Not because I was anyone special, because that was her job, and she read every single one, and she had a memory like a steel trap. She remembered a young sergeant named Kendrick, who kept her family care plan cleaner than her personnel file, who signed in front of the notary a full week before every rotation, every time, when most soldiers scrambled to do it the night before. She remembered because getting the dates right was the whole religion of her life. And here was somebody on her television getting a woman's dates spectacularly, cruelly wrong. Priya knew her. Half the drill sergeants in the state knew her. And when Priya called her that week and started to explain Trask, cut her off after 2 sentences. I saw it, she said. I have been sitting here for 3 days, deciding whether it was my business. It is my business. Send me the paper. We sent her the paper. All of it. The certified orders with the raised seals, the family care plan, the ledger, the sign-in sheets. She called me herself 2 nights later. I had never once spoken to her in my life. Her voice was gravel and iron, and something underneath it that was almost gentle. "Sergeant Kendrick," she said, "I have your orders in front of me. I have gone through every line. I want you to understand something before we take one more step. There is nothing in here you have to be ashamed of, nothing. You did the hard thing, correctly, for 19 years, and correctly is a lonely way to do anything." I did not trust my voice, so I said nothing. Now she said, "I made one phone call. That little morning show does a follow-up when a story gets big enough, and this one got big. 90,000 shares big. Their producer would very much like to hold on to the audience they accidentally found, so they are going to have a guest on Friday to add some context." I asked her who the guest was. There was a pause, and I could hear her recliner creak as she leaned forward 2 miles away, 31 years of Army in her voice. "Me," she said. "I am going to read your orders on their couch, date by date, until there is nothing left of the lie. You will not say one word about your own service. You do not have to. That was never your job. It is mine." The follow-up was set for that Friday morning. The same couch, the same soft light, the same host. Garrett and Danielle were invited back too, of course. That is the part that still amazes me. They said yes. They said yes because they believed they had already won, and people who believe they have already won will walk into almost anything. Garrett called me for the first time in months. Not on the app. He actually called, and I let it ring twice before I answered. And he was using the warm, reasonable voice he uses when he wants something. He said he had heard the show was doing a follow-up. He said he thought it would be good for us, good for Cole, to show the community that we were handling things like adults. He said, and I remember this exactly, it might be nice for people to see there are no hard feelings. I said that sounded fine. I said I would not be on camera. He was so relieved he almost thanked me. He thought my silence was surrender. He had spent 3 years reading my quiet as weakness. It is the single most expensive mistake he ever made. Because here is what he did not know. There was a woman he had never heard of, 73 years old, sitting in a recliner across town with a flat envelope in her lap, a raised seal under her thumb, going over my dates one more time so that when she said them out loud on the air, she would not need a single note. The night before I sat with Cole on the edge of his bed, I did not tell him what was going to happen. I did not want to hang his heart on a thing that might still go wrong. I only told him that tomorrow some people were going to talk about our family on television again, and that whatever they said, I wanted him to hold on to one fact that no camera could touch. I picked up his hand, and I laid it flat against my chest over the heart, the way you teach a scared recruit to find his own pulse. I said, "You feel that. That has never once left you. Not for a single day of your life. Everything else is just paper, and the paper is on our side." He fell asleep holding the cuff of my sleeve, the way he had when he was small. Then I went out to the kitchen, and I did not rehearse a speech because I was not going to give one. I made the coffee for the morning. I laid out my service uniform, the one with the campaign hat, not because I was going to be seen in it, but because a soldier puts her uniform in order the night before a hard day. And I sat at the table where 2 weeks earlier I had almost sent a furious message I would have regretted, and I felt for the first time since the parking lot something that was not quite calm and was not quite hope. It was the thing you feel at the top of a range when everything is finally correctly in its place. Friday came up hot and white over Columbia. I dropped Cole at my sister's, and I drove to the studio, and I did not go in. I sat in the parking lot. The same kind of parking lot where this whole thing had started, with my hands flat on the wheel. Only this time, I was not bracing. This time, I had already sent someone inside with the truth. I watched it on my phone in the car, on the same small screen where the whole thing had begun. I have thought since that there was something right about that the lie and the truth both came to me on the same 6 inches of glass. The segment opened the way the first one had. Warm light, the host on her stool, Garrett and Danielle on the couch. Danielle in blue this time, her tissue already in hand. The host said they had received an overwhelming response to last week's story, and that this morning they wanted to add some context and that they had a special guest. And then the camera pulled back, and there was Command Sergeant Major Luvinia Trask retired in the guest chair. She had worn her old dress uniform. It still fit. Her chest of ribbons climbed halfway up to her shoulder, and her hair was iron gray and cut severe, and she sat with the kind of stillness that makes a room quiet down without anybody deciding to. Danielle's smile flickered just slightly, the way a candle does when a door opens somewhere else in the house. The host, to her credit, tried to run her own show. She said, "Sergeant Major, thank you for joining us. I understand you wanted to speak to the importance of family." Trask said, "No, ma'am. I came to read some dates." She had the envelope. She opened it on her lap, unhurried, the way you handle a thing that does not need to rush because it is simply true. She drew out the certified orders, the raised seals catching the studio light, and she began. She did not raise her voice. Not once. She just started reading the way she must have read 10,000 files across 31 years, flat and exact and merciless in the way that only plain facts can be. On this date, she said, Staff Sergeant Shay Kendrick reported for a training rotation. And on this date 3 days before that, she filed a family care plan, notarized, naming her son's guardian, the hours, the schedule, the emergency contacts. Signed, approved, on file. She turned to the next page. On this date, a deployment. And here, 1 week before it, the plan. Signed, on file. She turned another page. Here, a field problem. And here again, the plan. She never once left that child without a legal named approved guardian. Not one time in 8 years. I have the paper, I have all of it right here. The host tried to say something. Trask lifted one finger off the page just an inch, and the host stopped talking. 31 years of command does not leave a voice. It waits in there. Now, Trask said they used a word on this couch last week. They called this soldier a deserter. So let us be precise, because precision is the entire point. A desertion is a crime. It has a definition. This woman does not have one mark against her in 19 years of service. What she has is a filing cabinet full of proof that every single time the Army sent her away from her son, she made sure, in advance, in writing, in front of a notary, that he was safe and loved and covered. That is not what a deserter does. That is what the best kind of mother in any uniform does. It is the loneliest, most invisible love there is, and you put it on television and called it abandonment. The camera, not knowing what else to do, cut to Garrett and Danielle. I will remember their faces until I die. Danielle had gone a specific gray of a person who has just understood the size of the room she is standing in. Garrett was doing the thing he does, the reasonable smile, but it had nowhere left to sit on his face. He opened his mouth. Trask was already holding the ledger. I also have 2 years of child support payments, she said without looking up. On time, in full. Every line stamped by the state, and I have the sign-in sheets from that boy's school. 41 times in 2 years in her own handwriting. Field trips, class parties, early pickups. A deserter does not sign the second-grade Thanksgiving logbook in her own hand. I am going to say her son's name one time, because he is going to hear about this morning, and I want him to hear it correct. Cole, your mother never left you. The paper says so, and the paper does not cry on television. The host had stopped smiling a full minute before. She was not smiling now. She turned to Garrett and, in a different voice, a real one, she asked him whether any of what he had said last week was documented. He said the thing that ended it. He said it was how it felt. Trask closed the envelope. She looked for the first time straight into the camera, straight through the little pane of glass in my hand, 2 miles away in a parking lot. Feelings are not orders, she said. And this woman's orders are clean. Then she folded her hands in her lap and waited, in her ribbons and her iron hair, for somebody to tell her the segment was over. The clip of the follow-up went further than the first one ever had. The correction, it turned out, traveled faster than the lie, which people will tell you never happens, and mostly they are right, and this was the one time in my life I got to watch it happen. The station quietly took the first segment down. They aired a short correction 2 days later, the host reading a careful statement about regretting any harm caused by incomplete information. Danielle deleted her accounts. Garrett stopped posting about privacy. My lawyer called me that afternoon, and he was a good lawyer, and he smelled blood. He said we could sue. Defamation, he said. It aired on television. It was demonstrably false. We could make all of them hurt. The station, Garrett, every last one, and we would very likely win. I told him no. He thought I was in shock. He said I should sleep on it. I told him I had already slept on it, back before there was anything to sleep on, and my answer was the same. I did not do any of this to make Garrett hurt. I did it so my son would know the truth, and my son knew the truth now, and a lawsuit would only put Cole back on a couch under a light for another year, a prize in a longer fight. I was not going to do to him what they had done to him, even with the law on my side. Especially with the law on my side. 2 weeks later, we had the custody hearing. The real one. The closed room that actually decided my life. It was almost quiet. The judge had the same packet Trask had read from, the certified orders, the plan, the ledger, the sign-in sheets. She looked at Garrett's motion to cut me down to supervised weekends, and she looked at the paper, and she gave me the schedule I had asked for from the very beginning, the one that was already true. I did not gloat. I had learned by then that the truth does not need any help from me looking pleased about it. Garrett and I have not spoken since, not with our mouths. Everything runs through the parenting app now, short and factual, the way I should have insisted on years ago. He types, "He is fine, do not overreact," and I do not answer anything except the parts about our son. I do not hate him. Hatred is a fire you have to keep feeding, and I decided I had better things to burn. And Lavinia Trask. I drove out to that little brick house the following week with Cole in the back seat and a coffee cake in my lap because you do not show up at a command sergeant major's home empty-handed, retired or not. She opened the door in a housecoat and bad knees and looked at my son for a long moment. Then she put out her hand to him formal, as though he were a soldier reporting in. "You are Cole," she said. "I have read a great deal about your mother. She is the real thing. You remember that when you are grown and the world tries to tell you different." Cole shook her hand and said, "Yes, ma'am," in a small voice, and I stood in the doorway of a stranger's house and felt, at last, something in my chest come loose. That was 3 summers ago now. Cole is 11. He is taller than the questions he used to ask. He does not remember the morning show the way I do, all lit up and sharp-edged. Mostly he remembers the coffee cake and the old woman who shook his hand like he mattered, and the plain fact that his mother wears a uniform which he now thinks is the most ordinary and boring thing in the world, which is exactly the gift I wanted to give him. The flat envelope with the raised seals is in a drawer in my kitchen. I do not take it out often, but I have not thrown it away, and I do not believe I ever will. Some papers you keep not because you still need them, but because of what it costs to gather them, and because a boy might want to see them one day, in his own hands, on his own time, when he is old enough to understand what quiet costs. Lavinia Trask passed last winter, 91 years old in her sleep in that same brick house. They folded a flag at her service, and a line of drill sergeants she had never met stood at attention for her in the heat, because she was our weather, and you do not let the weather pass by unhonored. I keep the program from that morning on my refrigerator. "This is not paper," she used to say. "This is a person." I have thought a great deal since that summer about what it means to be seen. Not admired, not defended, just seen, correctly, the way a thing actually is. My whole life I had believed that if you simply did the hard thing right over and over, in the dark where nobody is watching, then someday the doing would speak for itself. It does not. Not on its own. The world will tell whatever story is easiest to tell, and the easy story is almost never the true one, and doing right quietly is no protection at all against being called something you are not. But here is the other half the half I did not know until an old woman read my dates out on a television couch. The truth is patient. It will sit in a filing cabinet for years without ever once complaining. And when someone finally decides to read it out loud plainly, without raising their voice, It turns out to be the loudest thing in any room. I did not clear my name that summer. My name was never dirty. Someone with more courage than comfort simply read it out where it could finally be heard. If this story found you today, and you know someone who has been carrying the truth about themselves quietly, waiting for a room that will finally listen, share it with them. Tell them the paper is on their side, and it is patient, and their morning is coming. And if you would like to sit with me for another one of these stories, I would be honored to have you back. Take care of the quiet ones. They are usually the ones holding everything up.